Search for truth, find freedom. I think that's the main quote that you need to know for The Giver by Lois Lowry. And this movie was directed by Philip Noyce. And if you know the movie Salt, yeah, it's called Salt, he directed that. And at first, when I thought that the person who directed Salt was going to direct The Giver, I'm like, I'm not so sure about this. However, when I watched the movie, it was pretty good. Here is the poster that you always have for every single cool movie. And Jeff Bridges as The Giver. He is right here. And Meryl Streep as the Chief Elder. She is right here. Brenton Thwaites, I think that's how you pronounce it, it's hard, as Jonas. He's pretty handsome. Alexander Skarsgård. That's hard. He is Jonas's father. He's not a main character, so he's not on this poster, but he's pretty important. Odia Rush as Fiona. And Katie Holmes as Jonas's mother. I'm pretty sure some of you know Katie Holmes. She's very famous, actually. And I don't know if I should say this, but she's the ex-wife of Tom Cruise. And Taylor Swift as Rosemary. First, before I get into the differences and similarities about the book and the movie, I want to talk about the casting. Some of them I thought were really good casting, and some of them were not so good. First, Jeff Bridges as The Giver. I thought he was perfect for the role, even though on The Giver, the cover page, he has like a beard, the old man, the grandpa on the cover page of The Giver. But he fit that character, Jeff Bridges, and he's a very good actor. So he can act like an old man, but very wise and still kind of youth in him. And then Meryl Streep as the Chief Elder. I've actually seen her in a lot of movies. She's very, very famous, even though she's a very old woman. No offense. But she's a great actress. She was better than Jeff Bridges. She fit that character as the Chief Elder. She kind of looks like she's so proud, she has too much self-esteem. You know, she looked like she was kind of like high authority. Like you can just tell by looking at her, like, oh, she's like the Chief Elder. Like she just looks like that. She's like, hello, thank you for all coming. So she's very sincere in this as this character. Next, Brenton Thwaites. Let's say that, Thwaites. That's how you pronounce it. And first, as I mentioned, he's very handsome. He's kind of like the the Australian Kim Soo-hyun. Like he's like very like handsome, and he's a very good actor too. And I think he looked a little too like cute for Jonas, because Jonas is actually he's actually supposed to be like super skinny and stuff, but Brenton Thwaites is kind of like hunky. He's like bulk. So like as Jonas's character, it kind of didn't fit in because his body and his face was very different. And Alexander, Skarsgård was Jonas's father. Okay, he looked very young. He looked like 30 or something. So I'm like, wait, that's Jonas's father? So I'm like, oh, that's a little miscasting there for me. Just my opinion. Odia Rush was Fiona. She's very pretty, you know? You can just tell. She's very pretty. I thought she was kind of like a fierce, like sharp woman. She looks like it. And I think she was good for the role of Fiona. And Katie Holmes was Jonas's mother. Katie Holmes, I'm not sure that she fit the role of a mother, because in the book that Lois Lowry wrote, there's no actual family there where the parents would actually care and love their children. It's just like where the birth mothers give like birth, and there's only a family of 4, so it's just the mother and then father and then son and daughter. So it's just strangers technically living together thinking that they're a family. And once you exceed the limit of 4 people per household, then they release one of them. They're like, I don't care, just release some of them, the youngest one. That's why Gabriel was about to be released by the father. And lastly, Taylor Swift as Rosemary. Okay, I'm gonna be like as sincere as I can, but Taylor Swift, I don't think she's a very good actress. She's a very good singer. Like I've heard her sing, and she's very good. She has a wonderful voice, but as an actress, I don't think she fits that job because she kind of looks sensitive and sharp, kind of like Katie Holmes. So she didn't really fit the warm-hearted Rosemary type that was described in Lois Lowry's Giver. The genre of this dystopian movie is adventure, sci-fi, action, kind of in that zone, although there's a little bit of romance, just a hint of it. And I'm just going to mention the author of the Giver book again because she was technically the inspiration for this Giver Giver movie, sorry. Once again, she's a great writer. She's famous for Number the Stars, which I did a book review earlier. And she is a very good author to me. She writes books that are very appealing to kids, teenagers, and young adults, even though she's kind of like a But once again, she is the Lois Lowry. There's like no person like her. She went to Brown University. She knew she was gonna be a writer when she was 4 years old. Like who knows what kind of job you want to be when you're 4? So she was a born genius writer, I'm trying to say. The Lois Lowry. Introduction. Applause. Okay. There are a lot of differences between the Giver movie and the book, even though the movie was actually pretty good for someone who didn't read the book yet. The first difference is that, now I'm only going to make sure the big differences because some of the minor ones we don't really pay attention to. So one of the big ones is the jobs. When they were assigned the jobs, Fiona and Asher weren't supposed to be assigned that way. Fiona was supposed to be caretaker of the old, where in the movie she was the nurturer, like Jonas's father. And Asher was supposed to be assistant director of recreation because he was very open-minded. He loved to play games and stuff and jokes. But he was a drone pilot. You know, it didn't even mention that in the book. It mentioned stuff like gardener and stuff, and gardeners and other jobs, but it never mentioned drone pilot. And towards the end of the movie, I understood why Asher was assigned drone pilot. I'm going to tell you that later. Second difference is the ages. The ages were altered a little bit so that every single action would happen on the same day or the same setting. Like, Lily was supposed to be 8 years old when Jonas and the other friends were assigned jobs. However, she was 9 in the movie, so that she already learned how to ride a bike. She already got her bike, and she was riding it, and she learned in like 3 seconds. I don't even know how that makes sense. But it's a movie. Everything can happen in a movie. So the ages were altered a bit so that the movie would become like quicker, it would be more fluent and connecting. And the third difference is that towards the end of the movie is where all the main differences were. First, the pain. When Jonas was assigned the receiver of memory, he was first given wonderful memories. And then he said, give me a memory of pain, I can handle it. And in the movie, the first pain he experienced was a bee sting. Like a bee came to him and sting him like right here, and he's like, ow! And he woke up. However, in the book, his first experience of pain was sunburn. He was out on the beach and he was getting burned, and his whole arm, his whole body was red. And that was a lot more painful than a bee sting. So I guess that really wouldn't matter a lot. but the first experience of pain should be kind of harsh because he was getting, like, later on, he was getting memories of war, of killing, of guns, of child abuse, of abortion and stuff. So I think it should have been the sunburn. But I guess since it was a PG-13 movie, there is, just like Divergent, there are some of the things that they had to take out, had to crop it out because you can't show that. It's very inappropriate. Like when Fiona was supposed to be the caretaker of the old, she was Jonas and Fiona loved taking care of old people, and they loved them, they respected them, which they were supposed to do in Jonas's community, and they were supposed to like bathe them. But I guess now I understand why she was a nurturer instead, because it would be a lot more appropriate showing babies wrapped around in a blanket with only their heads sticking out than old grandpas and grandmas naked sitting in the bath scrubbing. Ugh. Oh. I just thought of that. Okay, so that's the third difference. The fourth difference is way at the end, when all the action happens, when Jonas runs away with Gabe. But I think, before I say that, the mother and the father were very, they were similar personalities in the movie, same as the book. And the mother was actually like a pretty high position in the community. She works with the chief elder in the movie, and Jonas's father was supposed to kill Gabe, or release him to elsewhere, they call it. Jerks. Like, I actually don't get how... I love Lewis Lowry, okay? I love her books, I love her writing, but I really don't get why this plot is so sad, so melodramatic. It's like, it's so, like, not human. It's not humane, I guess you could call it. It's immoral. It's not the right thing. They're like robots. They're literally robots, especially the family unit. They're not actual families. They're just pretending. And the kids don't know anything until they become older and learn about that stuff when they have, like, a pretty high rank in the chief elder. That's why when Jonas, both in the movie and the book, when Jonas asked his father, when Jonas asked his mother and father, he was like, "Do you love me?" Guess what they said? Precision of language, please. Do you see how harsh that is? It's like me asking my mother, like, "Do you love me?" She's like, precision of language. Love is not an actual word. That's very harsh. Like, I would probably want to punch her. I won't, because I'm an angel. Halo, 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 halo. So I thought that was very not humane, and it was not moral, because the mom doesn't even cook anything. There's like actual like jobs where like people cook it, and then I don't know why there's like a food dispenser thing, and the table is like an actual like rectangular block. There's 4 holes in it. And then with like plastic covers, you open the cover and the food just comes out. I'm like, whoa. I actually kind of want that. It's like a lunchbox, like the Korean lunchbox. Just this, you're done. You don't get anything more. I don't even think there's a refrigerator in there. Very not like our world. That's how, I loved how Lewis Lowry actually introduced our world at the end. I love that part. I love the world, even though sometimes I hate the world. But the world isn't fair. So, back to the differences. Towards the end, when I mentioned that Asher was a drone pilot for a reason, well, I kind of understand why the director put this, and I'm going to explain that later. But Asher was supposed to chase down Jonas. He was assigned that position for Chief Elder. She's like, you have to stop Jonas. He's becoming dangerous for all of us. And that's another difference that I'm going to mention. So Asher drives in his cool drone pilot technology thing. And he finds Jonas and Gabe. And then I guess their technology was super advanced because it's dystopian. I think it can happen in the dystopian world, which is another difference. There's this magnetic thing, or thing that attracts humans, I guess. And Jonas is sucked up. And now he's just hanging from like the bottom of the drone. And I bet that would be scary. Holding the baby! He's like, I don't think this realistic? It isn't. And Asher drops him in like a lake, like a waterfall. And somehow Jonah survives, and Gabe survives too. So that's so unlike the book, because I think the whole point of Giver by Louis Leary is to describe what would happen if we lived in a world with robots, what would happen if we were robots and we didn't have emotions or feelings, and if we took that stirring with this mechanical push button, and we didn't feel anything, we didn't feel love, we didn't feel any emotions or feelings, happiness, sadness, anger, hatred, any of those stuff. So I thought, wow, Louis Leary really inspires me. And that's the fourth difference. I think there's one or two more differences. The fifth one is the advancement of technology. I mentioned this in the last difference, but I don't think that in the book the technology was that advanced. There was just cameras like everywhere to make sure that they weren't doing things that the community members weren't supposed to do. Like Jonas would kiss Fiona in the movie, and he never did. He never did ever in the book. So the book and movie were very different. But the advancement of technology is very different, like as in the drone pilot. And also, Jonas was smart, or he invented this thing where he took plates and he sat on it, and he literally he slid in this stairs with Fiona. That's another memory that he shared with Fiona, which he wasn't supposed to, and he never did in the book. So actually, now I'm going to mention something. I actually wanted to be a director, a movie director, and I loved movies and making people feel all these emotions like happiness, sadness, like anger. Even though it's not your life, you kind of feel that if you're kind of embedded into the movie or TV show. And so I understand why Philip, the director, made it so different. He made it more exciting for teenagers, for young adults, because this book, technically you're supposed to read it in 5th grade, but it's supposed to be a young adult fiction. So he made it more appealing to adults. There was no kissing, but he added the kissing for girls. And he added the action where Asher dropped him into the lake. He added that to make the boys interested as well. So I understand that part, but I don't think he should have made it that different from the book, because I love that. After watching this movie, I'm like, you made me not like this book as much. Maybe 99%. So this movie, I think if you watched the Giver movie that he directed without reading the book first, I think it would be a great movie. It's rated 7 out of 10 in IMDb, and so I think it's a great movie as well. But however, if you read the book first and then watch the movie, it kind of seems like a bad movie because the book is so well written. But if you just watch it, like you never read The Giver before, you don't know what it's about, you just watch the movie and it's like, oh, there's a handsome guy, oh, there's a pretty girl, oh, there's two old people. Then you kind of understand the story better, and you don't really have a lot to compare between the book and the movie unless you search it up on Google. So actually, I think this was a pretty good movie. Even though there were some differences between the book, and the movie, it was enjoyable. It was exciting. There was no part that was made me bored, made me sleep during the movie, because there was always some juicy things in every single setting, every single cut of the scene. So I think you should watch this movie no matter if you read the book or you didn't, because it still symbolizes, it still shows the themes and lessons that you can get out of reading the book. So I think that's the important part. It doesn't matter for me, it doesn't matter who's handsome, who's pretty. As long as you still get the symbol, as long as you still understand the theme after watching the movie, and it's the same as the book then I think it's a good movie for me. I'm not a book critic or anything, But as I understand this movie, it still symbolizes family and kind of appreciate what you have, and how important emotions and feelings are as a human, how important it is not being an alien. And oh, actually, I have something to mention about aliens, but it's not related, so I'm not gonna. And it's pretty creepy. So it still symbolizes all the themes. It shows it very strongly because visual is kind of a lot clearer than imagining it in your head. Like, there's so many things that I thought would be so different, and especially when all the 16-year-olds gathered to get their jobs. I thought it was an outside thing where the stage was like super huge, the chief elders were there, and then all the other important people in rankings, like the giver, were just aside, and everyone was like there. But then it was so different, like there was a hologram of the chief elder because she couldn't be there. And they were sitting around in a circle and like divided kind of. And that was very different for me, and especially like the actual island, or I guess community of itself, was different for me too. Like at first when it zoomed out of the community, it was covered by clouds. It was like hovering over clouds, just standing there. So I'm like, what? And then the thing that confused me more was when Jonas drove off the island, he just landed on land again. So I'm like, what is going on here? But so that's what confused me. He literally drove off in his motorcycle, like, whee, and then he landed again. He started driving, and since it takes a long time for someone to drive somewhere with a motorcycle, there was desert, and then cold, and then desert, and I'm like, where does it end? There's no end to this island, even though it's covered by clouds. So that's the thing that I think confused me most. But again, this is a good movie. You should watch it because still symbolizes the stuff, and you could still learn a lot from this movie. It's somewhat similar to the book, even though all the action parts are different to make it more appealing to the watchers. But yeah, I think The Giver is a pretty good movie, although I prefer the book. Despite all the differences and similarities, the thing that confused me most was the actual structure of the island. It was floating. When it first zoomed out, there was clouds covering the island. I'm like, oh, okay, it's just a floating island, randomly in the air. However, at the end, when Jonas drove off, when he drove off in the motorcycle, like boom, boom, with Gabe, he jumped off and then he landed right again on land, and it was like desert. So I didn't understand if like the community was the top of the mountain, or if he jumped off a cliff, or if there's just a vast desert land, because it only took him like 2 seconds to land again. So that was the thing that confused me most. And again, with the advanced technology, it is future dystopian novel, so I guess it makes sense. I guess there could be anything really in this future dystopian novel, like flying monkeys or flying elephants, whatever you call it. But oh yeah, and never mind. Well, I think you should still watch this movie, although I always prefer the book because it's so much better. You can think a lot more. It's more critical thinking than just watching a movie and going like, oh, that sucks. So you kind of have to interpret it more, and I think you should watch it.